From as far back as I can remember, my life has been intertwined with fish and farming. My father harbored grand ambitions to transform our property into the nation's leading trout hatchery, and remarkably, he achieved it. I was always by his side, wading knee-deep in pond water, mastering every aspect of the trade. It was more than just work. It was our family's calling, a legacy that shaped my childhood. I spent my days shadowing the fish beneath the surface, learning the business nuances long before I understood what business really meant. Mia, my dad would call out, beckoning me to learn how to correctly sort the trout, an intricate skill essential for determining their paths on our farm. One tranquil evening, under a sky brushed with strokes of orange and purple, my father shared a poignant moment with me. His expression was solemn, his tone grave as he prepared to share some wisdom. "Look, kiddo," he began, "I won't be here forever. All of this," he gestured broadly at the land and waters around us, "will be yours someday. You need to be ready to nurture it, grow it, and elevate it to new heights." I remember brushing off his seriousness with a laugh, jokingly asserting that he would outlast us all, unwilling to face the reality of his mortality. Yet, his eyes softened with a mix of affection and earnestness as he made me promise to sustain and enhance our farm. Tragically, when I turned 26, cancer claimed my father's life. It struck our family hard, devastating my mother to the point of illness. Suddenly, I found myself at the helm of our operations, tasked with fulfilling my father's expansive dreams, which included diversifying into ornamental fish and even introducing livestock, given the expanse of our land. However, with my mother's health declining and the farm demanding constant attention, my personal aspirations had to be momentarily shelved. I employed a few extra hands to manage the more strenuous tasks, as running a fish farm is no small feat. It involves endless cycles of feeding, cleaning, and maintenance. But the responsibility was immense, and often, late at night, I would sit by the pond, lost in thought about my father. He had envisioned this life for me, and despite the challenges of facing it alone, I could almost hear him encouraging me, "You got this, girl." Those moments of solitude and reflection were brief, though, as there was always more to be done. Overseeing workers, purchasing fish food, cleaning tanks, and caring for my ailing mother. Despite the hardships, I remained resolute. My father had built something extraordinary, and I was determined not to let it falter on my watch. "We're doing this, Dad," I'd whisper into the night, committing myself to uphold his legacy. Life on the farm meant foregoing the glamour for practicality, preferring the fresh scent of dawn and muddy boots over any fancy attire. Yet, when an invitation to a charity dinner arrived, something within me stirred. Perhaps it was the relentless days surrounded by fish and feed, or maybe it was my mother's gentle nudge from her sickbed, her way of suggesting I add a little sparkle to my life. So, I traded my overalls for the only decent dress I owned, stepping into a world utterly alien from mine. The evening was a blur of new faces and polite conversations, a dazzling contrast to my daily life. Surrounded by superficial smiles and polite nods, I felt lost in the crowd until Lawrence and Lucas stumbled into my life like a breath of fresh air in a stifling room. Their laughter was easy and their presence genuine, a stark contrast to the pretentious atmosphere I had been navigating. Lawrence, with his infectious grin, approached me near the buffet and joked, "Never thought I'd meet a real farmer here." His comments sparked a connection, and I found myself joking about reevaluating my life choices. Lucas, always with his camera in hand, captured moments as if they were treasures. Their straightforward and unrefined demeanor made me feel at ease, a rarity in such gatherings. When Lawrence inquired about the farm with genuine interest, his humor about fish farming being fishy brought a genuine laugh from me, something I hadn't experienced in months. As the evening progressed, Lawrence's continued interest in my work and dreams for the farm was a refreshing change from the usual shallow conversations about online adventures. His admiration for my work, especially when I mentioned the farm's turnover in a rare moment of pride, felt like a validation of all my efforts. When he expressed interest in visiting the farm, I was surprised by my eagerness to show him my world. Walking through the hatcheries, their laughter, and Lawrence's excitement over every little detail of fish breeding was like a seal of approval for my life's work. As we watched the sunset over the pond, Lawrence's touch and warm voice sparked something new in me, something thrilling. Despite my mother's warnings that men like him might not adapt well to our straightforward, rural life, I wanted to believe that Lawrence was different. He seemed genuinely interested in embracing farm life and being with me. I defended him passionately to my mother, fueled by a hope I hadn't felt since my father passed. Our wedding was a simple yet profound celebration of love, set against the backdrop of our farm. Lucas documented every moment, capturing the joy of our union. However, as time passed, the initial magic of Lawrence's enthusiasm seemed to wear off. His interest in capturing every aspect of farm life began to feel more like a performance for the camera than genuine participation. The reality of our situation hit me hard one day when I found him lounging under an old oak, completely disengaged from the farm activities. This stark contrast between his initial fascination and the current disinterest made me wonder about the durability of our shared dreams and whether my mother's cautious words held more truth than I had wanted to admit. I could barely contain my disappointment, having hoped for your help today. These ponds won't clean themselves, after all. He glanced up, a leisurely smile unfurling across his features. I was about to, just taking a quick break to update my followers, he said. It was the usual excuse. His assistance was minimal and fleeting, only engaging when it benefited his online image. Whenever he did help, it was lackluster, often causing more issues than it resolved. I recall the first lesson I gave him on feeding our trout. You must be accurate with this. Overfeeding is wasteful, and underfeeding stunts their growth, I instructed, handing him the measuring scoop. He accepted it, nodding absent-mindedly. Sure, but think about how cool a feeding frenzy video would look. Imagine the views, he exclaimed. The gravity of our work, maintaining the delicate balance of life here, was merely fodder for his social media. Yet, love sometimes masks glaring warnings as trivial flaws. My mother, perceptive even in her illness, saw his true nature immediately. One night, as I sat beside her, she clasped my hand with surprising strength. That boy isn't here for you or the farm, she observed. I wanted to refute her words, to defend him, but I remained silent, the truth too painful to admit. Following another disappointing day of broken promises and him glued to his phone, my patience wore thin. Lawrence, I really need your genuine assistance, not just for appearances, I implored, frustration evident in my tone as I wiped away sweat. The farm demanded real effort, not just superficial involvement. He paused, his expression briefly sincere. I know I've been distant with the farm work, he admitted. Then, glancing at his brother by the barn, he offered, what if I manage the finances instead? His brother gave a subtle nod, and a silent exchange passed between them, leaving me out. Despite my reservations, the idea of lightening my load was appealing. Are you sure you can handle that? I asked, doubtful. Managing our finances was crucial, not a task for the careless. Absolutely, trust me, Lawrence asserted, though his assurance didn't quite reach his eyes. His brother interjected, Lawrence is good with numbers. You won't regret it. Perhaps it was my weariness or the remnants of faith in the man I married, but I conceded. Okay, you're in charge of the finances, but understand, we can't afford any mistakes, I said firmly. He nodded, too eagerly. You've got it. I'll handle everything. You won't have to worry. 7 months into our marriage, Lawrence faced challenges as his vlogging popularity waned. As the money dwindled, one evening he abruptly announced, Babe, I need to go to the city to sort some things out with my brother. The channel's not doing well. He didn't even glance up from his phone. I was in the middle of chopping vegetables for dinner, and I stopped, knife hovering in the air. And what about the farm? What about us? My voice was steady, but inside, a tempest was brewing. He was packing his camera equipment with more diligence than he had ever shown our shared life. It's just for a bit. You can manage things here, right? I nodded, lips pressed tightly together. I knew I could handle the farm, I always had. But as he walked out the door, A chill of loneliness wrapped around me, stark and severe. Not 3 weeks later, my mother's health plummeted. She had been my pillar, and now she was fading fast. After she passed away, I was shattered. I dialed Lawrence, seeking even the smallest comfort. "Lawrence, Mom's gone. I need you," I sobbed into the phone. There was a brief silence before he replied, "Babe, I'm swamped. The city's alive, and we're onto something big. I can't just leave." His words struck me harshly, too preoccupied to attend to his own wife's sorrow. I ended the call, the phone slipping from my numb hand. For long months later, Lawrence finally returned. He strutted onto the farm as if his absence had been nothing, as if he hadn't left me alone when I needed him the most. "Look at this place. But hey, I've got news," he beamed as I fed the fish, hands grimy. "News?" I repeated, dread settling in. "Yeah, found a new feed supplier. It's cheaper and the fish grow faster. We're going to save a lot," he explained, his eyes brightening with what seemed like a spark of responsibility. I stood up, wiping my hands on my apron. "We don't use chemicals, Lawrence. You know that. Our reputation hinges on natural, quality growth." He dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand, his excitement undiminished. "It's just business, babe. We need to think about profits. Plus, I have even bigger plans." "Bigger plans?" I asked, tension rising. He nodded, eager. "A massive event right here. Celebrities, influencers, the works. It'll put us on the map." I stared at him, a mix of disbelief and anger churning inside. "An event? With all these people and fireworks? Do you even understand what that could do to the fish, to the farm?" His patience waned, his excitement souring into frustration. "It's decided, all right? It's going to be epic." As the preparations unfolded, trucks invaded, carrying equipment alien to the pastoral life. Tents sprouted like unwelcome fungi, transforming the landscape into something unrecognizable. On the day of the event, the farm no longer felt like a sanctuary, but an occupied land, thronged by strangers indifferent to the delicate balance we nurtured. Lawrence mingled like a perfect host, while I stood aside, witnessing the disruption. The fish ponds, though off-limits, still drew curious guests, their intrigue ignorant of the harm they could cause. As dusk fell, the concert kicked off. Music throbbed through the evening air, an invasive sound against the tranquil backdrop. From a distance, I watched, my heart heavy with each note. Then, the fireworks erupted, bright, loud, and terrifying. Beneath the surface, I could only imagine the terror inflicted on our fish, their home now a chaotic clash of light and noise. When the fireworks dwindled to a smoky silence, it left a palpable gloom over the farm. I began cleaning up the mess left by the guests, the weight of the day's events pressing coldly against my resolve. When I overheard Lawrence and his brother, they were hidden in the shadows, their voices low but brimming with excitement. "That was epic, man. Did you see the views rolling in? Our channel's going to explode after this." Lawrence's voice held a note of triumph that sent shivers down my spine. His brother's laugh was oily and disdainful. "Yeah, those clowns eat it right up. Fools, all of them, easy as pie." I edged closer, shrouded by the dark, my heart thumping wildly. This was the man I had married, speaking with such cold, calculated disregard for his followers. Their talk then shifted in a chilling direction. "So, about the farm," his brother murmured, his tone barely a whisper. "You think she'll fall for it?" Lawrence's reply was a scoff, dripping with scorn. "Of course she will. She's clueless, a complete fool. Just a bit of charm and she'll sign whatever I put in front of her. Might not even have to forge anything." Their quiet, conspiratorial laughter broke something inside me. The warnings from my mother, the doubts I had suppressed, they all crashed over me in that instant. The next evening at dinner, I faced them, Lawrence with his deceivingly warm smile and his brother, the quiet conspirator. They exchanged fleeting glances, underestimating my awareness. "Dinner's great, isn't it? Hope the farm's growing on you, Lawrence," I said, my voice a calm veneer over my seething thoughts. "Oh, it is. It's fantastic here, Mia. "We're going to do great things," he replied, reaching for my hand. His touch, once comforting, now repulsed me like a serpent's coil. His brother chimed in, "Yeah, we've got big plans. This place has so much potential." I gently withdrew my hand, still smiling. "I'm glad to hear it. I've got some plans of my own, for the farm." They paused, unease flickering across their faces. "Oh, like what?" Lawrence asked, his tone edged with caution. "Just some ideas I've been toying with." "You'll see," I replied, keeping my tone light and airy as if I hadn't just uncovered their betrayal. After the chaos of the event settled, I knew drastic steps were needed. My first stop was the family lawyer, Mr. Bobby, in his office which smelled of leather and old books, a comfort amid the turmoil. "Mr. Bobby, I need to lock down the farm's finances. Lawrence can't have access anymore," I stated plainly. He looked up, surprise etching his features before nodding. "That's serious, Mia? All right, let's get the paperwork started." Then I did something I never imagined I would. I hired a private investigator named Ethan, known for his thoroughness. A week later, he laid out the grim reality. Lawrence and his brother had been siphoning money from the farm, funding their schemes, and lining their pockets. My heart sank, fury and self-reproach swirling within me. Armed with the evidence, I marched to the police station. Handing over the documents, I felt a mix of relief and dread. "They've been stealing from the farm," I told the officer, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. When the police picked up Lawrence and his brother, Lawrence dared to call me. "Mia, you gotta bail us out," he pleaded. The nerve of his request only fueled my resolve. This was the end of overlooking his misdeeds, the end of his deception. After a misunderstanding, he called me, his voice desperate on the phone. I couldn't help but laugh at his use of the word misunderstanding. It was clear what had happened. "Enjoy your stay," I replied and ended the call with a definitive click. A sense of relief washed over me, yet I knew there was still much to address. Determined to expose the whole debacle, I decided to turn the situation into a public spectacle. If Lawrence adored the limelight so much, he was about to be thrust into it, though not in the manner he'd prefer. I reached out to a local TV station and several of Lawrence's rival bloggers. "Come to the farm and see the chaos his grand plans caused," I urged them. They arrived, cameras ready, capturing the devastating aftermath. Dead fish floated in the ponds, casualties of the raucous explosions. The air was heavy with a foul stench, a tangible reminder of the havoc wreaked. Standing before the cameras, I narrated our ordeal. This is the consequence when fame and greed overshadow responsibility. This farm is our livelihood, and their reckless pursuit for views almost obliterated it. The public outcry was swift and fierce. The internet was abuzz with a real story, showing the dead fish and the damage inflicted on the farm. Cartoonists depicted the brothers as symbols of greed and foolishness. Lawrence's channel's popularity plummeted, losing followers rapidly. Advertisers withdrew, unwilling to associate with him or his brother. But my actions didn't stop there. Driven by a blend of anger and a desire for justice, I initiated a divorce and filed a lawsuit against them, demanding compensation for every dollar they cost me and the farm, amounting to $2.8 million. It felt like a declaration of war, but for the first time in months, I was on the offensive. Amidst this, I launched my own YouTube channel. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my narrative and honoring my family's legacy. To my surprise, or perhaps not, people rallied behind me. Subscribers flocked to the channel, eager to witness the farm's recovery unfold. Lawrence attempted to reconcile, bombarding me with calls, texts, and feeble apologies. "Let's talk. We can resolve this," he'd plead. But I had moved on, focusing on rebuilding the farm and securing our future. The court's ruling was the final blow to their schemes, awarding me $2.1 million in damages. Watching Lawrence and his brother struggle to comply with the payments and face charges for attempted fraud was more gratifying than I cared to admit. They lost it all: their followers, their credibility, and any semblance of respect. As dawn broke, casting a golden glow over the revitalized farm, I stood by the fence, a sense of peace enveloping me for the first time in a long while. Wayne, my longest-serving employee, approached with 2 cups of coffee. Handing me one, he remarked, "Morning, Mia. Looks like it's going to be a good day." Sipping the bitter coffee grounded me. "It does. We've come a long way, haven't we?" I replied. He leaned on the fence, nodding in agreement. "We sure have. Never thought I'd see this place so lively again." Glancing at the ornamental fish tanks, now shimmering with vibrant colors, a stark contrast to our old trout ponds, I couldn't help but smile. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" I said, reflecting on the new chapter unfolding before us. Wayne and I stood by the shimmering fish tanks, admiring the vibrant scene. "And profitable too, who would have thought?" he said with a chuckle. "You were the visionary, always knew it. You saw beyond just trout and feed," Wayne continued, his voice echoing a blend of admiration and surprise. As we discussed the day's tasks, my phone vibrated with an incoming email. It was a request from a local school hoping to organize a field trip to our farm. "Looks like we're becoming a staple in the community," I remarked, showing Wayne the email. "That's fantastic. Education is as vital as business. These kids have a lot to learn from what you've built here," he replied, a hint of pride lacing his voice. I couldn't help but smile, feeling the weight of our achievements. Our farm was no longer just about recuperation. It was a beacon of resilience, education, and progress. The future seemed as bright as the morning sun that stretched across our fields. We had plans to expand, with ideas for sustainability projects and community outreach pulsing at the heart of our agenda. The betrayal that once loomed large now paved the way for this new chapter, one brimming with hope, growth, and new horizons. Wayne's voice brought me back to the moment. "Ready to get started?" "Those fish aren't going to feed themselves," he joked. Laughing along, I nodded in agreement. "Let's do it. There's no place I'd rather be." As we made our way into the heart of the lively farm, I felt a wave of readiness wash over me. I was equipped with the same resolve and vigor that had helped me overcome the hardest moments in my life. I was ready to face any obstacles that might arise. The future was yet to be decided, and for the first time in many years, I was truly thrilled about the possibilities that awaited us on this new path.